The morning sun was just beginning to rise over the coastal wetlands of North Carolina. Golden light spread across the marsh grass, and the air smelled of salt water and earth. It was the kind of peaceful morning that makes you grateful to be alive. But for one young creature struggling near the water's edge, this beautiful morning might be his last dot. Sarah Mitchell had been a park ranger for almost 12 years. She had seen countless sunrises over these wetlands, and she knew every sound, every scent, every rhythm of this place. But this morning was different. Her radio crackled to life just as she was finishing her first cup of coffee. A local fisherman named Tom had called in something unusual. There was a pelican down by the shoreline, and it hadn't moved since yesterday evening. Tom had checked on it twice, and both times the bird was in the same spot, just sitting there in the shallow water. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She had learned over the years that when a wild bird stays in one place for that long, something is seriously wrong. Birds are designed to move, to fly, to search for food constantly. A motionless bird is a bird in trouble. She grabbed her keys, checked her rescue kit, and headed out. The morning suddenly felt more urgent, less peaceful. Somewhere out there, a living creature was in a fight for survival, and time was not on his side. The drive to the marsh took about 20 minutes, but it felt longer. Sarah's mind ran through possibilities. Was the bird injured? Had it been hit by a boat? Was fishing line wrapped around its wings? She had seen that too many times, and it broke her heart every single time. Humans leave behind invisible dangers that trap and kill animals who have no idea what these strange materials are. When she arrived at the marsh, she parked her truck and walked slowly toward the water. She had learned long ago that rushing helps no one. A frightened animal can hurt itself trying to escape, and she needed to assess the situation calmly. The marsh grass rustled around her boots, and a light breeze carried the cry of gulls overhead. Everything seemed normal, except at WASN single quotes, T. And then she saw him. About 30 feet ahead, partially hidden by a clump of marsh grass, was a brown pelican. He was young, maybe 8 or 9 months old, still learning how to survive on his own. He sat completely still in the shallow water, his wings tucked tight against his body, his head drooping low. Even from a distance, Sarah could see something was terribly wrong. Healthy pelicans are constantly alert, constantly moving. This one looked like a statue. She approached slowly, her footsteps careful and deliberate. She spoke softly, not because the bird would understand her words, but because her calm voice might help keep him from panicking. As she got closer, she could see more details that worried her. The pelican's eyes were half closed, and his breathing was shallow but steady. His feathers looked dull, not shiny and healthy like they should be, and he was shivering, even though the morning sun was already warming the air. Sarah knelt down about 10 feet away and just watched him for a few minutes. This was important. You cannot help an animal if you do not understand what is wrong. She looked for signs of injury. Was there blood? Were his wings bent at strange angles? Was fishing line cutting into his flesh? But she saw none of these things. No visible wounds, no fishing gear tangled around him, no obvious trauma. What she did see was exhaustion. Deep, dangerous exhaustion. The pelican's body language told her everything. The way he sat so still, the way his head drooped, the shivers that ran through his body despite the warmth. These were all signs she had seen before. This young bird was severely dehydrated and starving. His body had burned through every reserve of energy it had, and now it was shutting down. Sarah knew exactly what had happened because she had seen it happen to young pelicans before. Learning to hunt is hard. Adult pelicans make it look easy, diving from incredible heights to catch fish beneath the surface. But young birds are clumsy. They miss more than they catch. They burn energy diving again and again, sometimes for days, without catching enough fish to replace what they are spending. And in the summer heat, dehydration comes fast. A young pelican can go from healthy to critical in just a couple of days. This pelican had probably spent the last week struggling to feed himself. Each day he grew weaker. Each failed dive cost him energy he could not replace. Eventually, his body simply gave out. He could not fly anymore. He could not hunt anymore. He had ended up here in the shallow water, stranded and helpless, waiting for the end that comes to so many young animals who cannot quite master the skills they need to survive. But he had been lucky in one crucial way. Tom the fisherman had noticed him. Tom had cared enough to make a phone call, and Sarah had responded. This pelican story was not over yet. Sarah walked back to her truck and opened the back hatch. Inside was her rescue kit, organized and ready for exactly this kind of situation. She pulled out a large soft towel, a transport crate with ventilation holes drilled in the sides, and a bottle of electrolyte solution. She also grabbed her phone and called the Carolina Waterfowl Rescue Center, letting them know she was bringing in a critical case. They needed to be ready as she walked back toward the pelican. She thought about how many people do not realize how often this happens. They see pelicans flying gracefully over the ocean and assume these birds have it easy. They do not see the young ones struggling to learn. They do not see the ones who do not make it. Nature is beautiful, but it is also harsh and unforgiving. Not every baby pelican survives its first year. In fact, many do not. But today, this one had a chance. She approached the pelican again, moving even more slowly than before. He watched her now with those dark, tired eyes. He was too weak to run or fly, but his instincts still told him to be wary of humans. Sarah respected that. She was entering his space, his world, and she needed to honor that even as she tried to help him. When she was close enough, she spoke softly to him. "Hey there, buddy. I know you are scared. I know you do not feel good, but I promise I am here to help you. We are going to get you somewhere safe, okay?" The pelican did not respond, of course, but Sarah kept talking anyway. Her voice was steady and calm, and that mattered more than the words themselves. In one smooth, practiced motion, she gently draped the towel over the pelican's body. The darkness calmed him immediately, which was exactly what she wanted. When a bird cannot see, it feels safer, less exposed. The towel also protected both of them. Even a weak pelican has a long, sharp beak that can cause serious injury if the bird panics. Sarah carefully lifted the pelican, supporting his body with both hands. He was shockingly light. A healthy pelican this age should weigh around 7 or 8 pounds, but this one felt like he weighed barely 5. She could feel his breastbone jutting out sharply under his thin layer of feathers and skin. Her heart ached for him. She carried him to the transport crate and gently placed him inside, making sure his wings were properly positioned so they would not be damaged during the drive. The crate was lined with a soft towel, and the darkness inside would help keep him calm. As she closed the door and secured the latch, the pelican did not fight or struggle. He simply did not have the energy. Sarah secured the crate in the back of her truck, making sure it would not slide around during the drive. Then she climbed into the driver's seat and began the 30-minute journey to the rescue center. She drove carefully, avoiding potholes and sudden stops. Every bump, every sharp turn could stress the pelican's already fragile body. She kept the radio off and the windows up, creating a quiet, calm environment. As she drove, she thought about all the rescue calls she had responded to over the years. Some had happy endings, some did not. She had learned not to make promises she could not keep, not even to herself. This pelican was in bad shape. He might not make it, but he had a chance, and sometimes a chance is all you can give. The Carolina Waterfowl Rescue Center appeared ahead, a modest building surrounded by large outdoor enclosures, where recovering birds could practice flying and hunting before being released back into the wild. Sarah had brought dozens of animals here over the years, and she trusted these people completely. They were not just kind, they were skilled professionals who understood wildlife, medicine, and rehabilitation. She pulled up to the entrance and carried the crate inside. The team was already waiting. Jessica, one of the senior rehabilitators, met her at the door. "What do we have?" she asked, her voice calm and professional. "Young brown pelican, severe dehydration and malnutrition, possibly been down for 24 to 48 hours. No visible injuries, no fishing line, just exhaustion," Sarah explained quickly. Jessica nodded and took the crate. "We will take good care of him. Thanks for getting him here so fast." Sarah watched as they carried the pelican into the examination room. She wanted to stay, to see what happened next, but she knew she needed to let them work. These people knew what they were doing. The pelican was in the best possible hands now. Inside the examination room, Dr. Emily Chen, the center's veterinarian, carefully removed the pelican from his crate. She worked with gentle, confident hands, speaking softly to him the entire time. The pelican watched her with tired eyes but did not struggle. Dr. Chen performed a thorough examination, checking his eyes, his breathing, his heart rate, the condition of his feathers and skin. She palpated his abdomen gently, checking for any internal injuries or blockages. She examined his wings and legs for fractures. She looked inside his mouth and down his throat for any signs of infection or parasites. Her diagnosis confirmed what Sarah had suspected. This was a case of severe dehydration, malnutrition, and exhaustion. But the good news, the wonderful news, was that there were no injuries, no infections, no broken bones. This pelican's problems were fixable. He needed fluids, food, rest, and time, and those were things the rescue center could provide. Dr. Chen prepared a subcutaneous fluid injection. carefully inserting the needle under the loose skin at the back of the pelican's neck. The fluids would help rehydrate his body, replacing what he had lost over days of struggle. He would receive these treatments multiple times over the next day or two until his body could maintain proper hydration on its own. She also administered vitamin supplements to boost his weakened immune system. When an animal is this stressed and malnourished, its defenses are down, and infections can take hold quickly. Prevention was key. For now, food would have to wait. As much as this pelican needed nutrition, feeding a severely dehydrated animal too quickly could cause serious complications. His digestive system needed time to stabilize first. Tomorrow, if he showed improvement, they would offer him small fish. But today was about fluids and rest. The pelican was placed in a quiet recovery room with soft, dim lighting. A shallow pool of clean, fresh water was available if he wanted to drink or bathe. The temperature was carefully controlled to keep him comfortable. A soft towel cushioned the floor where he could rest. And then came the most important part of his treatment, the part that cannot be rushed or forced. Time. His body needed time to heal, to recover, to remember how to be strong again. Over the next 3 days, small miracles happened. On the first day, the pelican drank water. Not much, just a few sips at first, but it was enough. His body was accepting help, responding to treatment. Jessica checked on him every few hours, noting his condition in the medical log. By evening, he had drunk more water and seemed slightly more alert. On the second day, something even better happened. When Jessica entered the recovery room carrying a small bucket of fresh fish, the pelican lifted his head and watched her with interest. She placed 3 small fish in his pool and stepped back. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the pelican walked to the pool's edge. He stared at the fish, and then he lunged, catching one in his bill. He tossed his head back and swallowed it whole. Jessica felt tears spring to her eyes. This was the moment she lived for, the moment when a wild animal showed her it was going to survive. The pelican ate all 3 fish, then looked around as if hoping for more. Jessica smiled. Appetite was an excellent sign. By the 3rd day, the transformation was remarkable. The pelican was standing more often, moving around his recovery room, preening his feathers carefully. His eyes were bright and alert. The shivers had stopped. He looked like a different bird. But the rehabilitators knew their job was not finished. Getting a bird stable was just the first step. The real challenge was getting him strong enough to survive in the wild again. That would take more time, more food, more practice. Over the next 2 weeks, the pelican was gradually moved to larger enclosures. First a small outdoor pen where he could feel the sun and wind again. Then a larger flight pen where he could stretch his wings and practice short flights. Finally, a large pool enclosure where he could practice diving for live fish. The staff watched him carefully during this time, but they never handled him more than necessary. Their goal was not to make him comfortable with humans. Their goal was to help him heal while keeping his wild instincts intact. He needed to remain wary of people. He needed to remember that he was a wild pelican, not a pet. And he did remember. As his strength returned, so did his natural caution around humans. He would take food from the bucket, but he kept his distance. He dove for fish with growing skill and confidence. He flew stronger every day. After 2 weeks at the center, Dr. Chen performed a final health check. She examined him thoroughly, checking everything one more time. His weight was back to normal. His feathers were glossy and healthy. His flight was strong and sure. There was no reason to keep him any longer. It was time. Sarah got a phone call from Jessica. "We are releasing your pelican tomorrow morning. Want to come watch?" Sarah did not hesitate. "I will be there." The next morning was clear and beautiful, much like the morning Sarah had found him struggling in the marsh. The team loaded the pelican into a transport crate one final time and drove him back to the same coastal area where he had been rescued. This was his home territory. He knew these waters, these marshes, these fishing grounds. Releasing him here gave him the best chance of success. They parked near the water's edge and carried the crate down to the shore. Sarah stood nearby, her hands clasped together, her heart beating fast. She had been part of many releases over the years, but each one felt special, felt important. Jessica opened the crate door and stepped back. For a moment, nothing happened. The pelican stood inside the crate, looking out at the world he had been away from for 2 weeks. Sarah wondered what he was thinking, if he remembered this place, if he was afraid or eager or confused. And then he stepped forward. He walked out of the crate with steady, confident steps. He did not look at the humans watching him. His attention was on the water, the sky, the freedom waiting for him. He walked straight to the water's edge and stood there for a moment, his head tilted slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. Then he dove forward into the shallow water. and swam a few strokes. He tested his wings, spreading them wide and flapping them strongly. Everything worked perfectly. And then, with powerful strokes, he launched himself into the air. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The pelican flew low over the water at first, gaining altitude with each wing beat. His flight was strong, graceful, confident. He looked like he had never been sick, never been weak, never been close to death. He circled once over the marsh, and Sarah liked to think he was saying goodbye, saying thank you, even though she knew that was probably just her human need to find meaning in things. Then he turned and flew toward the open water, his wings catching the morning light. They watched until he was just a small speck in the distance, and then until they could not see him anymore at all. Sarah wiped her eyes. She was not embarrassed. These moments always made her emotional, and she was not ashamed of that. Jessica stood beside her, smiling. "He's going to make it," Jessica said quietly. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "He is." As they walked back to their vehicles, Sarah thought about the chain of events that had saved this pelican's life. Tom the fisherman had noticed a bird in distress and had cared enough to report it. Sarah had responded quickly and carefully. The rescue center had provided expert care and the time needed for healing. And now, a young pelican who should have died was flying free over the ocean, alive and wild and exactly where he belonged. But Sarah also knew the harder truth. This pelican had been lucky. For every animal that gets rescued, dozens more die unseen and Young seabirds struggle every summer, learning to hunt, fighting to survive their first year. Many do not make it. That is the reality of nature. But it does not have to be that way for all of them. We can help. We can pay attention. We can care if you see a wild animal that appears to be in distress, truly in distress, motionless for many hours, unable to move away from danger, clearly injured. Contact your local wildlife rescue center or animal control. Do not try to rescue the animal yourself unless you have been trained. Even weak animals can injure you or themselves during handling. But you can make that phone call. You can be the person who notices, who cares, who acts. We can also prevent these situations from happening in the first place. Keep beaches and waterways clean. Pick up trash, especially plastic bags and fishing line that can entangle and kill birds. Properly dispose of fishing gear. Support local wildlife rehabilitation centers with donations or volunteer work if you can. Small actions matter. One phone call saved this pelican's life. One decision to stop and check on a struggling bird made all the difference between life and death. Somewhere over the North Carolina coast right now, that young pelican is flying. He is diving for fish, riding the wind, living the wild, free life he was born to live. He does not know how close he came to dying. He does not know that human hands saved him, and that is exactly how it should be. This is what real wildlife rescue looks like. There is no drama, no staged heroics, no exaggeration, just compassion, knowledge, skill, and the simple belief that every living creature deserves a chance. That pelican fought for his life with everything he had, and when he could not fight anymore, people stepped in to fight for him. Together, they won. And that is a victory worth celebrating.